I would like to introduce Stephen Taylor, CFO, author, speaker, and an amazing person who helps CEOs and board members make faster, smarter financial decisions, and who is so up to date, even does AI stuff, which I am excited to find out more about, by the way. So welcome,
Yeah,
Stephen,
absolutely.
and thank you for your
Thank you
time
so
today.
much. Thank you so much. It's truly a privilege to be here today. I'm looking forward to catching up with you.
Well, it is, but doing my research for you, when I look at books, most people have books are coming out. You've got a book out right now, Aged Care Reform 2025 for Executives. And it's 2025. Most people do it a year ahead. You've got it right. Aged Care Reform for 2025. In Australia, that's a big thing because in Australia, everything's changed as of 2025.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And particularly in the aged care industry, we have a new act that comes into play from 1 July of 2025, and it's got pretty big ramifications for the entire industry. The timing of the book was really around that, and it was really born out of the need for multiple conversations I was having last year, where a lot of executives were expressing, you know, really just not sure how to navigate what was going to come up. How do we operationalize things with this new act that comes into place? So that really planted the seed for the book over those months. Just knuckled down and got into it and was able to produce the book. And I'm hoping that other executives find value out of it. So yeah, it's an exciting time indeed.
It is, but that was just a little side note, sorry. It was leading to a
Yeah.
more important question here, and that is executives. Are they prepared to read? Are they prepared to learn? Is ego a problem there? Because you've done M&As before, and I know you've done them in the aged care environment as well, but you're
Yeah.
experienced with M&As. My experience has been that most executives are inexperienced with M&As and
Yeah.
don't understand what's involved, which then leads to complications further down the track. I would
100%.
love
Yeah.
your input on that, please.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I think it is one of those areas that probably I'd say for most executives, you don't necessarily come across that or you're exposed to it. And I'd say for most executives, maybe you'll be exposed to maybe one or two over your career. So it's not something that, a traditional executive would necessarily have a lot of experience and exposure to. So naturally, there is a bit of uncertainty and unfortunately there's not a lot of guidance out of there, I think, and real well-established playbooks. And I'd suggest that a lot of professionals maybe keep the inside secrets close to the chest and don't share necessarily the war stories. So I think it's one of those things where as an executive, if you're coming up with that, you do need to invest time and effort in learning, seeking out knowledge, speaking to people who have been there, done that, and particularly understanding what went right and what went wrong. There's the theoretical side of an MMA, you follow the process, you've got the financial models, but fundamentally the process involves people. It's about people and really understanding, I think, the psychology around that. And quite often people just focus on the front end, and that's just getting the deal done. But really the hard work, in my opinion, happens post the acquisition. It's, how do you actually get that acquisition to deliver on the business case that originally, set out to acquire that company? And that's really where the rubber hits the road, in my view. And that's where the real hard work comes into play. I know you've done a bit. How's that aligned with your experience?
Well, as I'm listening to you, I'm thinking, gee, I wish my seat had a seatbelt so that I wouldn't fall off the chair here. Who are you? And can you show us your qualifications, please? Because are you really a CFO that says that it's people that are making this happen? This is just contrary to everything that you would expect. But
Yeah,
a
well,
direct answer to your question is
mm,
yes, I think everything that you've said there is totally correct. It really is through my experience. Yes, it's people. Yes, I always say that the executives may do one or two M&As in their career. The words that you've used there are exactly what I say. So you're just reading my playbook. But I will
brilliant,
say one
brilliant.
other thing, and
Yeah.
that is, and it gets back to your book,
Mm,
Aged Care Reform 2025, A Practical Guide for Executives and Managers. And that is when I came out from under the coat of the KPMGs and the EYs and all that sort of
mm,
stuff for going in and being their troubleshooter for M&As, the first thing that I did was I wrote a 60 module program for the C-suite and the M&A teams on how to
yeah,
go about doing an M&A
that's
so that
incredible.
they would be
Mm,
prepared for when they decided to go out looking, because it has to be
mm,
done before you go out looking to do an M&A. You have to be
absolutely.
prepared before then. If you, from a
Agree.
CFO perspective, if you haven't got your numbers right, then
Oh,
you've got no
absolutely.
place
You need
going out looking.
100%. I think, for example, you need to have your processes, etc., really defined. You really need to understand that once you bring this organization into play, what are you telling them? What is the standard for your month-end close? What's the quality of your reporting? How do you do forecasting? What procedures are you doing? And quite often, you're acquiring a company, they probably have a different ERP system to you. I was working
Yeah.
with an organization once that was growing via acquisition, and we had done about six or eight. And we wound up with, I think, five different ERPs to do our regular month end, and it's just crazy. Ultimately, everything got dumped in Excel and we just did it in Excel. But, these are things that you really do need to unpack and have a very clear view of, what you want going forward.
It is that you started on the topic of integration there. And
Mm,
yes, when I'll go back, you also commented that the CEO's C-suite hesitate to talk about their M&As. They keep it close to their chest. My suspicion as to why that is true, and I have to agree with you again, my
mm.
suspicion as to why that is true is because 83% of M&As fail to achieve their financial goals within the first 3 years.
Yeah, I'm
So
not
why they're
surprised.
keeping it close to their chest is because
Yeah,
they failed. They didn't
100%.
fail because they're not good at their jobs. They failed because they didn't have the strategies, that they weren't prepared. They weren't prepared themselves. They weren't prepared for the business itself wasn't prepared. They weren't
Yeah,
prepared for that financial systems. Oh, we're going to have a different financial system. What's our strategy for bringing that across and getting all the historical stuff? Because we have to keep that for 7 years as a minimum. How are we
yeah,
going to get that out?
absolutely. The operational side of it is critical, and also the change management. Quite often, I think you hit it on a really good point there, is that, as the CFO, CEO, etc., you might be ready for that, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the folks at the forefront, the guys working the counter, in the back, whether
Mm.
it be nurses or mechanics, etc., that they're ready for it, that they understand the part that they play. And if you, as I think the leader of that integration, haven't started to have those conversations, trying to do that once you've made the acquisition and you're trying to bolt it in is a bit late. To be
Yes.
truly effective, that has to be ready in the run up, very clear processes, and everybody in the organization needs to be very clear why you're doing it and how you're going to go about it. Probably as the C-suite, we should be providing tools and guides to help people on that, because it just, if you're going to leave it to them to try and figure out, people are quite ingenious. They'll find a way, but might not necessarily be the best way.
Well, that's exactly why I wrote this program, and it covers property, IT, finance,
Really?
payroll.
where is this? I want it.
It's okay. Well,
Yeah,
I'll put a link on the end of this for you and I'll send it to you
brilliant.
after this. It covers all of the different funnels that you need,
Mm,
all the different verticals that you need, so that you, as the head of department, can now start
right.
to prepare your staff. Because as a head of department, you very well may not have done an M&A at all. This may be
Absolutely.
your first. And I can
Yeah.
assure you, it is a hell of a surprise. I got had a phone call with one organisation, which is very well known here in Australia, and I described their case study when just over the phone when they described it to me. I said, "Look, what you've got here is a steam train going down a hill without brakes and a brick wall at the other end."
Wow. That's
Because
quite the image.
they were not, they brought me on for that role because I think I was
Yeah.
the
Wow.
only one that was honest with them.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
that's the key thing. Everyone I think buys into the excitement and so forth, and doesn't necessarily, want to think straight because they're sort of committed, fully committed. You know, they don't want to lose face, etc. But sometimes, there are situations where you unpack the onion and you get halfway through and you come to that realization that, you know what, actually, this isn't going to work. And I think it's a brave CEO slash CFO, etc., that has, almost the guts and forewithal to step up to the table and say that.
Okay. Let's go in on that point then, shall we? Are you saying to me, it was in the back of my mind and I was going to bring it up, that the CEO may not be, we've bagged them here, we've bagged the C suite to a degree here. I
Yeah,
guess that's
yeah,
you.
yeah.
Are you saying that it's not the C suite's fault? Shall we step it up a level? Is it the board's fault? Has the board got the right vision? They've
Mm,
brought the CEO in who has
yeah,
the skills, who's got the
yeah.
experience with the M&As or the roll-ups, but they haven't given the timetable for the CEO or the C-suite, we'll broaden it now, to
Yeah.
actually carry out that vision.
It's an excellent point, and I do think that, there are certainly instances where that's been the case. I can recall a board where, the chairman was just focused on growth and,
Mm.
at almost any cost, and was almost wanting to be like a legacy that they would leave. And, not necessarily what's the best interest for the company, but that's a bit more of a selfish view, I think. But yeah, it's certainly definitely the C-suite serves at the pleasure of the board ultimately. So there is a lot of there's a lot of influence there, and if the board is hell bent on it or feels that they might lose face, then absolutely that the political side of it has a massive impact. And to ignore that or to pretend that it doesn't exist, I think is a fallacy. It's for sure
Okay.
a huge thing.
Well, thank you, Stephen. This has been a wonderful chat. I've got to leave now because I now have to go and write a summary of my previous course and write one now for
Okay.
the board.
Yeah, love
Good
it.
to, you've just expanded my product line by one item, I think.
Phenomenal.
Uh, okay. I don't think we've done a full intro on you. And I think we
Okay.
should do this because you are a global citizen. When we're talking with
Mm,
you, we're talking from someone that's been in South Africa, Vancouver. You've worked for the likes of Kodak. You've worked for some really huge companies here around the
yeah,
world. Can you give us a
yeah.
bit of another bit of a rundown on that, please?
Sure, sure. So I grew up in South Africa. My parents were Canadian, so spent my early childhood in South Africa and the UK. My dad used to work for General Electric, so just moved around a bit. And then I moved to Vancouver probably within the first week of finishing my undergraduate degree, and started work at Kodak as a financial analyst. And I joined a team that was tasked with coming up with a whole new product division. So it was working with the best and brightest that they had at the time, and it really set the tone for my career, and it exposed me to seeing how you go from a concept through to actually operationalize something. held that experience very closely to me ever since then. But based off of that experience, moved into British American Tobacco, helped them redefine their supply chains, set up distribution centers. Then from Vancouver, I moved to Montreal. I lived in Montreal for some time. I worked in their marketing finance team and eventually wound up in Australia after being here on holiday and discovering that this is where my heart was, and I just fell in love with Australia. So I moved to Melbourne. I worked with a few organizations there, including Shell Oil. It was finance. Yeah, yeah, like you. And so worked through in their downstream operations, was made redundant at one point, and then moved into a PE-backed organization that was growing through MMA. That was a very exciting experience, etc. Really, again, reinforced the operational side, tying in the financials, but also equally bringing in the operational side of things. And then from there, I moved to William Adams Caterpillar. So worked in sort of the earth moving industries, etc. Again, was exposed to some MMA there. And really looked at sort of the business partnering side of things, really helping making sure that the finance teams brought value to the business. Over the COVID period, I've had a lot of opportunity here in in Victoria, to reflect on my career, and decided healthcare related industries is where my heart was. So I sort of moved into overseeing a hospital and aged care, did a sold off an aged care business there, and now I'm working in the aged care sector with another large player, but equally at the same time working as a fractional CFO, where I've been helping other sort of growth organizations with sort of financial insights, oversight, etc., bringing that sort of C-suite oversight and insights to boards, etc. So it's been a really exciting journey, and every day is a learning opportunity, and I really embrace opportunities to learn and grow, and I look for opportunities wherever I can.
Okay. So if we had a bell or a donger, I'd chime it about now, okay? Because now we get down to the real reason that you're here today. Thank you, Stephen. Did you
Excellent.
just say that you're a fractional CFO?
Yes, so I'm a fractional CFO. So probably your next question is, well, what is a fractional CFO? So a fractional CFO is someone who provides CFOs services to organizations that can't necessarily afford, or it doesn't make sense at this particular point for them to appoint there could be a growth organization or an organization that's going through a turnaround, etc., and they're not quite ready to put on this big six-figure salary, etc. So this is where I step in to fill that gap. So provide them with the financial expertise without necessarily the fixed on cost that they would if they needed to employ someone on a full-time basis. So they get to leverage the multiple industry experience, the deep financial and operational insights, but at a much more affordable price tag.
The reason that is so interesting to me is I'm doing dental roll-ups here in Australia at the moment.
Right.
And I'm putting together a business to bring the numbers up on roll-up acquisitions, the bolt-ons. So I'm actually looking for all the staff and the appropriate people to slot into my organizational chart.
Right.
And again, it's not full-time as you build and grow the business. That's where a fractional CFO, a fractional CEO, fractional staff are really key these days. And that's really one of the reasons that I wanted to talk to you today as well, because I'm using this as a job interview.
Perfect. Well, I'm your man.
But that's why when I do these podcasts, for the people that are watching this, I go very deep into the people that I bring onto the podcast. Talking about your book there, your other book on NDIS Financial Management, the CFO's Guide to Operational Excellence. But we should also be talking about your CFOinsights.blog as well, with some extraordinary articles on AI, how to bring the numbers up there using AI, navigating mergers, acquisitions in a strategic approach, understanding different methods of acquisition and mergers and acquisitions as well. So it is important for the people that are watching this, go deep on the people that you're talking to. I spend
Yeah,
30 minutes to an hour researching people every single time before I meet with them, so that when I come on board,
absolutely.
I actually know who I'm talking with and I
Yeah,
can
yeah. Look,
value
it's
their time
critical.
as well as mine.
Of course, yeah. Well, as you can see, I quite enjoy writing. It is a passion of mine, so I do find writing my blog articles and reports, etc. I find that quite enjoyable. I find it a real good expression, and it's a skill set that I continue to refine, but something I do enjoy.
All of those details, by the way, will be at the end of this. If people miss me
Perfect,
reading them out there, they will be at the bottom of this for everyone as
fantastic.
well.
Yeah, that's
Now, tell us about the financials. When you go looking at a business, where does AI fit in these days? And I ask you that question, and then I'm at the end of it, I'll probably tell you some of my experiences along that as well.
yeah, I'd love to hear it. Look, my experience to date is, AI, as you know, it's relatively new and it's still being refined, etc. And I've been playing with it for, I'd suggest maybe, a year and a half, really. I have attempted to, throw in some financials and look and see what the insights are. What I have found is there are hallucinations. AI has interpreted things incorrectly. And I think the danger lies there. For example, as a CPA, I could look at the response because I've been trained and have, experience in it. I can tell, oh, yeah, that's wrong. But somebody who's not trained and is, just relying on
Yeah.
ChatGPT to interpret that, seems logical. It reads fine. It is, you would just assume it's correct. That's, I think, still the danger. So AI, I think, can uncover some insights that might be missed or open up avenues you've never thought of. But it's certainly nowhere near at the point where you can, I would suggest, really rely on it. And if you're relying on it for mergers and acquisitions or something of that significance, I think you're opening yourself up. It's a bit dangerous at this stage. In a few years, 5 years, who knows?
I think 5 years might be a bit down the track. I think it'll be
Mm,
sooner than that. But yes, right
yeah,
now, that is absolutely the case. So I think I don't normally timestamp these podcast recordings, but I think we will do that on this occasion for this discussion. It is
sure.
the 19th of May, 2025, that this recording is done. What I am not a financial expert such as yourself.
Mm,
It
yeah,
is important that I have the ability to be able to analyze financials, profit and loss,
mm,
balance sheets, and the like, and go back over a few years and see whether the trends are in alignment
yeah,
or
yeah.
not, and try and figure out how much of these founders are siphoning off to personal accounts for different reasons. All of
Yeah,
those is
yeah.
very important. But knowing my limitations, I'm not a
Mm,
financial person. I can get an indication. If I
yeah,
then throw the stuff into ChatGPT as an example, it
mm,
can come back with some really relevant information for me to dig deeper. And
yeah,
then
I
I can
agree.
ask it to dig deeper on that and explain itself. This podcast is called A Prophet's Lessons from the Trenches. The lessons from the trenches is really important. You need to be
Yeah,
talking with people that have those lessons, that have been through the
100%.
trenches and know. However, did you know that this company negotiated with the software vendor to pay very little? They planned this 3 years out, pay very little
Yeah,
licensing in the first year, pay next to
yeah,
nothing in the second year, and a balloon
yeah,
payment in the third year. That's not going to
yeah,
show
absolutely.
up.
100%. And likewise, let's say a number of key customers, the agreement is based on a handshake. It's not a written thing, and
Yeah.
it's based on a relationship with the founder. And when that founder steps away, there's nothing to hold them to the new owners. Those sort of insights and details will not appear on your financials or anywhere. And hence, I think coming right back to the start of our conversation is these deals and business ultimately is about relationships and it's about the people. And that I can't see replacing. It's more than just a theoretical exercise. You feed in a spreadsheet and it spits out yes, acquire, no.
Mm.
That's not how the world works.
Well, you're using my words at me again, Stephen. So I'm feeling as though I'm going to be able to retire after this because I notice you've got the vest, you've got the glasses, you've got the
Yeah.
hair swept back like mine as well. You're trying to replace me here, I think.
I doubt I could, but maybe another.
Okay. Thank you for that. I have to agree. I think AI is going to be, and we're just talking financials there, but AI for the contracts as well
Yeah,
is
yeah.
it is great for giving you a synopsis and for reviewing them. But I've got a nice little plaque up there from Victoria Police where I went through their IT contract with probably the largest IT vendor in the world. So I won't mention their
Right.
three-letter name. I'll get myself into trouble with them. But I
Yeah.
went through their contract and I found one little line in that contract that saved Victoria Police $5 million a
Wow.
year.
Gosh. Okay.
And it was the way it was worded. Now, I can't imagine AI going through and finding that two words round the wrong way that gave
No.
me the leverage to be able to then go through and cut the budget by $5 million a year.
And that's an incredible outcome. And yeah, I think that's a really good example of where, as humans, we still have a big part to play in it. I think AI definitely, helps. It probably frees us up to allow us to do more of that kind of thing, which in my view, is, I think, a good thing. That's where I'd rather be spending my time as opposed to doing some of the more tedious, repetitive activities. So I'm certainly in favor of it.
Well, I think that within probably another 5 months, you and I would be able to have a totally different conversation on this, and we would not be talking about AI and ChatGPT. We will be
Yeah,
talking about AI agents and
absolutely. I
how
mean,
they are going to be
huge, huge.
used in the M&A environment. And you'll have someone like myself come in as the M&A specialist, but I will come equipped with a whole variety of agents to go through
Yeah, yeah.
legal contracts, go through finances, and then
Oh,
argue
yeah.
amongst themselves to return information back to me. I think that
Yeah,
is what we'll be
I
talking
could.
about.
I would tend to agree. I think I've seen agents evolve, quite a bit now, and there seems to be a lot of work in that. The other space that I think is worth considering is AI automation, and that's the automation bit of, tasks, etc. I think that's going to probably hit the broader sectors a lot quicker than maybe some of the agents. But I do think the potential around both agents and sort of the AI automation things is just incredible. It's huge, huge.
Is but everything needs to be checked at this
Yeah,
stage.
it's
That
not
will
a
change
second
over
for boy.
time, but it's the maturity
Mm,
of it right now.
100%. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think, and there's also the ethical side of things. We do need to, not lose sight of that, that we need to decide, I think, as a society as to how much control we want to relinquish and just hand over to the agents, etc., and so forth. But that's a topic for another time, another
Uh,
podcast. Yeah.
yeah, I'm not too sure I'm the person for that topic. I think we'll need a philosopher in for that one.
Yeah, possibly. Yeah.
Hmm.
Agreed.
Well, Stephen, we've covered quite a few things in this conversation. Is there anything that you would like to round off the conversation with?
No, the only thing I would just say, look, I think it's an exciting time for a lot of organizations. I spoke at an industry or seminar not too long ago, and the sense I got was there was a lot of interpretation about AI, not wanting to get involved. I think we should. I think you have to in this day and age. Be careful, obviously, but don't be afraid. Get your hands dirty. Really try and get into it. Read what you can. Have a play. I think that's critical. And also, if you feel that you need financial support, look to your fractional, the fractional industry, CEOs, CFOs, CMOs, whatever it is. I think there's a massive opportunity out there. There are a lot of people with amazing skills and experiences that are looking to share that. Would be more than happy to come in and help your organization, etc., and scale, etc., and go from there. And I think that could be a win-win for a lot of organizations and from, the fractional side of it. So keep an open mind to it.
Thank you, Stephen. Just on that, if I may, it is in people's mindset that they should be employing people for 38 to 40 hours a week. And then you've got to find the work for them to do that. The one person to do that extra work as well. Why not have a couple of fractional people that are skilled, highly skilled in that particular task so that they can go and do that work, and then someone else to go and do that remainder of the work? You can get the best staff. And these days, a lot of them are going to have a bit of grey hair on them as well. The reason for that is because of lifestyle. They don't want to work 40 hours a week. They just want to work a bit.
Yeah, I think the other approach would be, I agree with everything you've said, but maybe to get your toes, give them a specific project. Give you an example. I just worked with an organization that just needed help with their budget. So I came on board, just helped them pull together their budget over a 2-month period for a specific time. We agreed on a fee to deliver that specific outcome. So it's not an out by hour sort of arrangement, and there's flexibility there, and that went very well. So I think I think you'd be remiss. A lot of organizations could use that and really can avoid some really big costly mistakes along their journey if they just kept an open mind and explored the fractional route.
And to recruit a person, you've got to go and pay a headhunter money.
Absolutely.
As well.
It's costly.
You pay them a 5-figure digit to employ someone.
For
a
sure,
fractional employee, a good fractional employee that comes with enormous credentials, you don't have to outlay that money. That money can then be put in directly to paying the entire bill for that person. So, yes, I think it is underutilized. I think that we should be working on that a lot more. All your details and stuff will be down below, so people will not lose that. Thank you, Stephen. I think this has been an incredible conversation, so valuable for people, even with me.
No, I think it's been great. And once again, thank you for the opportunity. It was really great meeting you and chatting with you today.
Beautiful. Thank you, Stephen.